How's it going, people? Salmon Slabber here, and this is Runescape Lore. This series is where we talk about kind of the histories and everything that happened in the past, as well as the key figures in kind of really important moments of RuneScape's history. And the last episode we covered Lord Iowerth, and this is kind of part of the Elven storyline that I'm trying to cover at the moment, since Privziness and stuff is going to be coming into the game soon. So, with Lord Iowerth, we covered basically the Underground Pass. It's one of the quests, part of the Elven storyline, to give you access to Tyras. And today we're kind of going to be carrying that on, focusing mainly on the Elven storyline itself. So today we're talking about King Tyras. Now some of you may or may not have actually heard of King Tyras or remember him. Basically, King Tyras, his full name is King Tyras Ardougne. He was the ruler or the king of Western Ardougne. And Western Ardougne is part of the capital city of Kandarin. Tyras, along with his brother King Lathus, each ruled half of Ardougne, essentially giving the city two entirely separate governments, but at the same time they're one item, if you will. Well, Tyras himself was born to King Ulthus Ardougne, and Ulthus was the third king of Ardougne, and he kind of ruled the later half of the 5th Age. As with many of the key figures in RuneScape, little is known of Tyras' early life, though it is thought that Tyras and his brother Lathus seem to have kind of a sibling rivalry, even at an early age, and this kind of grew and grew over time. In the year 136 of the 5th Age, King Ulthus was said to have been killed by a stray arrow during a hunting trip. Yeah, that's kind of questionable in and of itself, but carrying on. This left the job of leading his kingdom or his empire to his heirs. Prior to his death, Ulthus specified that when he was to die, his two sons would each be given an equal half of Ardougne to rule. And it was because of this that Tyras was given the city's western half, whilst Lathus became the king of the eastern. As this little section here kind of covers the first few quests of the Elven storyline. This is Biohazard, for example. It covers that kind of section. But Tyras ruled West Ardougne for quite some time, and although as a king he wasn't, as it was, immensely popular or well respected, or everyone kind of grew to love him, but he was still a good king. He was accepted by his peons nonetheless. He may not have been cried out for on the streets, but people accepted him as their ruler, so he did a fairly good job. And with this, the city grew under his rule, expanding further and further west, leading eventually to the impassable Arandar mountain range. As the city expanded west, a section of small mountains on the Arandar's edge was mined and opened up to make way for construction of new buildings. However, this digging uncovered what we now know as the Underground Pass. The Underground Pass, once upon a time ago, was an ancient elven tunnel system that had once connected the lands of Kandarin to the realms of Tyras, the realm of the Elven. Tyras, upon finding this underground pass within his city borders, found the prospect of exploring Tyras simply impossible to resist. In turn, he took a highly trained division of Ardougne armies, and King Tyras actually decided to travel through the underground pass, which at the time was largely abandoned. With Tyras gone and away from the throne though, West Ardougne, as you would expect, soon began to weaken. Even as its eastern neighbour, which was currently ruled by his brother Lathus, grew in wealth and political influence, Western Ardougne, with the absence of their king, soon fell into disarray. And this was not helped by the fact that the city was now being led by Tyras' incredibly inexperienced assistants. Soon, because of this, there was no longer any decent politics, trade was no longer being substantiated, and public morale soon plummeted. And King Tyras soon became quickly unpopular. However, Tyras himself, after spending some time in Tyras, did indeed temporarily return to Western Ardougne with his surviving men in order to recruit new soldiers and resupply. However, his time spent in West Ardougne was relatively brief. though soon after that, after not very long, he recruited his soldiers, gained some more supplies. He ended up leaving once more for Tyrannon. And it's here that we kind of join the story, if you will. This is the part where we come into the Plague quest and the Biohazard quest. Shortly after Tyras left his steadily declining city, a major supposed plague swept through West Ardougne. A group of mourners were soon sent by King Laethus, immediately placed the city under quarantine, fortifying its walls and sealing any known entrance to the city. The mourners were protected by insulated gear, and soon they began to take those they believed diseased in an effort to control the outbreak. Those infected initially displayed flu-like symptoms. When informed of this, the mourners would take the infected to an undisclosed medical center, where they treated in a way that would not spread the plague. This mortality rate, once infected, though, was reportedly 100% of patients. However, in reality, what we find out, the plague was actually part of an elaborate plot devised by King Laethus and Lord Iowerth, one being the King of Eastern Ardougne, and the other an Elven lord responsible for betraying as well as conquering the Elven capital city of Privthinus. The plague was actually non-existent, and those diseased inhabitants of West Ardougne were only infected with a minor illness, which was actually caused by a deliberate poisoning of the city's food supply. Those taken by the mourners were brought to an excavation beneath Arandar, and it was here that they were enslaved and forced to dig in an expedition to try and find the Temple of Light. Unaware of this plot, the people of West Ardougne soon began to blame and shout at King Tyras for bringing this foreign and incurable plague from the poison wastes of southern Isafdar. Soon, as you would expect, the city soon fell into disarray and soon became dilapidated. Its people soon began to be in constant fear and severe poverty. Tyras, as you would think, immediately became the city's greatest enemy, and soon his people began to diminish, either by escaping or simply being enslaved by the mourners. Now this part takes us towards the Regicide quest. Tyras, unaware of what was actually happening within West Ardougne, continued to explore Tyrannon, eventually even making it as far as the Western Sea. His highly trained group of Tyras guards that came along with him, though increasingly few in number at this point, kept him safe from dangers of the Elven forest. However, Lord Iowerth, seeing King Tyras as a foreign invader and a potential meddler in his plan, declared him a rogue element, attempting to conquer Privthinus, as well as an enemy of the Iowerth clan. The two soon erupted in armed conflict, although this conflict was kind of one-sided, simply because the elves were in their element. This was their homeland. The elves' knowledge of their forest alone put Tyras and his men at a sheer monstrous disadvantage. However, despite this, Tyras did eventually manage to escape from Iowerth, and soon established a hidden camp in the secluded forests of the southwestern of Isafdar. It was here they set up a small garrison, and even with that, and even though they was in hiding, every person in that camp was in constant fear. Tyras's men knew that before long the clan would find and slaughter them. Tyras, however, would from that point spend considerable time within his war tent, attempting to find a way to overcome Iowerth, or, if necessary, somehow escape. Despite near infinite resources at his disposal, Lord Iowerth was unable to locate Tyras, even with his most experienced trackers. Deciding assassination was the best way to eliminate the threat of Tyras, Iowerth requested that Laethus send someone to do the dirty work for them. King Laethus, on the other hand, was indeed hoping to use the Privthinus Death Guard to claim Camelot, and with that idea in mind, he complied with Iowerth's request. He soon sent an adventurer that had helped him to remove the Zamorakian mage Ivan from the underground pass. This adventurer was led to believe that Tyras was in fact an enemy of Ardougne, and soon agreed without question. The adventurer, travelling once more through the again abandoned pass, arrived within Tyras shortly after. Immediately upon arriving, he soon met an elf from Iowerth, a group that had been betrayed by Iowerth and forced from Provinus. Hearing of this, Iowerth soldiers arrived and soon killed the rebel before he could warn the adventurer of Iowerth's true intentions. Iowerth soon began to take advantage of the adventurer's naivety to the situation though. He soon instructed them to construct a bomb that could be used to kill Tyras. After constructing this from native explosives, the adventurer gained control of the catapult just north of their hidden camp, and soon sent a bomb hurling into Tyras' camp. Tyras was killed by this explosion. His body was apparently completely incinerated. After returning to Ardougne Castle to tell of their success though, the adventurer was soon confronted by an elf from Iowerth, who explained that Tyras and Iowerth were in fact the enemy, and Tyras had actually been an ally of the elven kind of Iowerth. Today, Tyras' few surviving soldiers can still be found remaining within their garrison. However, now they're leaderless, and simply unable to escape the forests of his after. Now the interesting thing about Tyras himself is he's not actually a bad fella. I mean, if you talk to the citizens and stuff in Western Ardougne while you're going through the quests and everything as well, he's made out to be this evil pain in the ass guy kind of thing. But in fact, he's literally just exploring the Elven lands. And Tyras took full advantage of this. His brother, probably something due towards their rivalry when they were young, kind of went on a bit of a mad one. He's trying to take over Camelot is Tyras' plan. And in order to do this, he needs assistance from an outside source. And since Iowerth needs help as well, the two kind of gel together quite well. And with this, they're looking for the Temple of Light to gain access to death rooms. So, because of this, Tyras being within the Elven lands, it fell on Iowerth to kind of silence an unknown element. I mean, Tyras could completely and utterly sway the tables for them, could utterly destroy their plan potentially. And that is where we came in. We found out that the plague wasn't actually a plague, and we kind of went along with the king after he convinced you that Tyras is actually the one responsible for it, and he's the enemy. So you go over, you kill him, and yeah, there you go. Learn from your mistakes, I guess, you know what I mean? But yeah, that was King Tyras. That's not the entirety of the Elven questline, but I thought King Tyras should have a mention because, well, not much is really mentioned about him in-game other than when you start to do the Regicide quest. So that is Tyras' life, pretty much. So yeah, with that, I hope you all enjoyed. So next time, probably be covering the Elvens again, but until then, I will catch you all later. Have a good one.